There was a big parade. I remember torches and the people.
Muss in Deutschland kommen und muss sagen, den Frieden wollen wir, aber diese ununterbrochene Entrückung lehnen wir ab und die Entbehrung ertragen wir nicht.
And later when I asked, they said yes, that was the parade when he became chancellor. I remember World War II. I remember it started when I was 8. I didn't know what is war. I was afraid because of the atmosphere around me, because my parents had already been through World War I, and I felt something terrible was coming toward us. And I asked my mother, "Mama, what is war?" She didn't answer much. She said, "You'll be all right, you'll be safe. We are here for you." My father was too old to be drafted. He kept working at his job. He worked for the Opel plant. I know that, maybe not at first, but later the Opel plant produced parts for the V2 missiles. And because of that, I guess we got bombed quite a bit. I remember the street I lived in, a bomb hit the middle of the street, about, say, 2 houses from my house. And people were killed on both sides of the street in the houses. We weren't there during that attack. We were in the Opel plant cellars because they were not far from us and they were more protection than our cellars in the houses. So our neighbors were killed. One neighbor, there was a kind mother and a kind father and a mother and a young, about 6-year-old boy. And the father was in the army. The boy was visiting with neighbors farther down the street, and they would not let him run home while the attack was going. His whole family was killed. He was the only survivor. My girlfriend, I was 10, she was 10. Her house got bombed, she died in it. Lots of people in the little town I lived in that I knew, many people died. I think we were kind of numb. Somehow we just kept going. I do remember being just warm in bed, and the alarm would sound and we would get up and run to the bunker. There was a bunker built by the Opel plant, and people that lived not too far away from could go there when there was, when air raids came. My mother, in the middle of the night, would listen to a radio we were forbidden to listen to. The identification, and it would go like this. Maybe it came, I don't know where it came from, but I do remember when, by that sign, that she was listening to them. The neighbor next door was in, well, I guess it's a Nazi. My sister and I would be scared to death in our beds because we knew that if anybody heard it, and my mother could end up in concentration camp. She listened to it. She said, I have to know what's going on because we only got propaganda. I remembered a girl about my age walking through the street with a star on, and how she was walking right there by the houses, you know, like she was afraid. She probably was. And I was too young to really know, but it made me feel really bad because the way she was walking, the way she was, you know, looking. And I do remember that we lived where on my way to school I had to pass the Jewish synagogue. And that one morning when I walked to school, the synagogue was burning, and all the stuff that was inside was thrown on the grass outside, and books were burning, and apparently that was the Kristallnacht, where they, you know, ransacked all the Jewish places and the stores, and I was too young to know really what was going on. But kids feel that something bad's in the air, and I had a terrible feeling. When I got home later that night, there was another family living on the second floor. We lived on the first floor, and they lived on the second floor. And I heard the man saying, well, we shot those Jews last night. So apparently he was part of it. Our neighbor across the street, he was in the Democratic Party before Hitler came on or something like that. And one morning he was gone. And it was close to the end of the war. And I remember that after a few months, he was back home, and we would ask him, what happened to you? You know, you're a kid, you have to use a piece here and a piece there, but I do know that I felt things were not good. There was bad things happening, but nobody in those times, people didn't tell kids things like that, you know, what was really going on. They thought we didn't need to know. I saw Hitler himself. He came by our town in a train, kind of slow, and he was standing in the window like this. And we all had to go to the train station because when you were 10 years old, you automatically were in the Hitler Youth. And when they said you had to go to be there with your uniform on, you went there. In the beginning, when I was 10, it was fun. We did sports, we did go in the woods and nature parks. And then it went on. All we would do is sit there and go through Hitler's life, Hitler's Mein Kampf and all this, and it got boring. Every Sunday morning, there'd be marches through the town. And once I was in the Hitler Youth, I had to, go every Sunday morning. We would march somewhere. My mother said to try and keep us from going to church. I knew enough not to say what my family, my mother and father called him, and just kind of keep quiet when people said how, mein Führer and all this, and my parents didn't like him. When the bombing got too bad, and my mother said I had to stay home rather than go to meetings, they threatened her. But she said she's not going. If we die together. She's staying home because there was always air raids, there's always alarm. I remember standing outside the bunker. We had been staying in the bunker for over a week. Couldn't even go home because the raids were constantly. We also got shot at with artillery into our town, so we couldn't go home. And the last night before the Americans came into town, my oldest sister had a baby. And my mother had to go with her, and she couldn't have it in the bunker where there was just no place for her, there was no store. She had it in a cellar where the house was gone. No water to wash the baby with the midwife that went with my mother and my sister and the midwife. And then they brought her back to the bunker with the baby. And next morning the Americans came in and checked everything out, and said this was the first free person born in the town. It was my little nephew. We heard that. Yeah, he killed himself. Yeah. Nobody was sorry. And in a way, I thought he was, what would you call it? didn't face what he should have faced. When they marched into our hometown, we were happy. It was over. War is bad. It should never happen. It's bad for the one that wins it, because what they lose, all the people they lose, it's bad for the one that loses it, because they lose the people. And the big ones that make the money out of the wars, that send the soldiers to the wars, nothing happens to them. Boys, war should never happen. There should always be ways to talk, to make concessions.